Hi, this is Dave Linehan, singer-songwriter, and all-around nice guy. I got him fooled, don't I? And you're listening to the award-winning podcast, The Business Side of Music, with your host and that legend in his own mind, Bob Bender.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On this episode of The Business Side of Music, we have two people in the studio today. And of course, the first one sitting across from me, the ever lovely, the ever wonderful, the ever charming Sharon Lee, who is the CEO of High Road Trucking and has been on the show once or twice before.
I think just once, but we've spent a lot of time together, so it feels like more.
We have spent a lot of time together. Good times.
Good, amazing times.
Yeah, and she introduced me to this gentleman who's sitting next to me, who's in between Sharon and myself, Chris Lisle, who is the Executive Director of Touring Career Workshop, which I want to talk a little bit about in its own right. And you have a new entity, and this is a topic of conversation I don't believe we've ever had on the show, which is mental health in the music industry.
Oh, it's huge. It's very important.
Well, when you think about it, yeah, definitely. But let's take a couple steps back first, and let's talk about Touring Career Workshop, which I said you're the executive director on. How did that get started, and what's that all about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Touring Career Workshop was formed in 2011. Myself and a friend of mine named Eric Parker, both touring people at that time, especially really involved in actively touring. We're facing this time where we were constantly getting the same questions over and over, like, who do you use for an accountant? Who do you use for tax planning? Who do you use for retirement planning? And what do you do about this? And at the same time, I was watching my mentors in this industry, which is another important thing, start to hit the end of their work cycle and had nothing left to show for their hard work. They had no savings account, no retirement account. Their health was bad. And it just got me thinking about what could have been different in their lives to have had a different outcome for their career. So in conjunction with getting these questions from younger people going, who do you use for such and such accountants and stuff, we thought, okay, let's do this night of guest speakers to speak on these topics, on these human resource related topics. And we basically, that was 2011, we went to Belmont. They gave us a space for free. And we ended up lining up 15 panelists, just back to back, that each spoke just for like micro segments, 15, 20 minutes on these topics. Some of them with a service to sell or an accountant would, if you wanted to hire them afterwards, you could. But our whole thing was, this is free. Get in here, listen to some basic human resource topics, and then take the next steps if you're so inclined.
I think one of the things I've noticed over the years, being an old road dog myself, before taking a desk job, was that the music business, especially the touring aspect of it, it has been and probably still is to a certain extent the wild, wild west, although it's not nearly as so as, say, 20 years ago. But it's still kind of a free-form employment roster. You go out and you find people to fill slots.
It is, but you know what's great? You know what I love, and knowing you come from the touring world, you'll know what I'm talking about. I love the fact that when I started touring, likely when you were on the road, it was a white male-dominated industry, and we're so diverse now. Females, males, people of color, I mean, anybody you can think of. And all of us just work well together because we're all kind of like the island of misfit toys. We're all unique in our own ways.
Great way to put it.
And have our own little personality traits. We're all quirky. It takes a little bit of quirk to be a road person.
I love that analogy, the island of misfit toys.
I've not heard that before, but I will use it. That was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you in the trucking industry, I mean, it's really the same thing. It's finding that certain personality, much like a tour bus driver who understands that your job is so vitally important, but in many instances, it's overlooked or ignored by other people within the industry.
Right. And we've talked about this, the difference between, and we won't get off this topic too much, but the difference between bus drivers and truck drivers are that bus drivers are included in the crew because they're traveling on that bus with the crew, where truck drivers are really driving solo, separately, showing up at the venue. So they're not building those same relationships and having the same face time as the rest of the crew and even as the bus drivers do. So yeah, that's a challenge.
And I think that brings in the mental health aspect of it all, because as Sharon said, it's long hours on the road. A lot of times, even though you're in a group of other people, you sometimes feel alone. You know, you're laying in your bunk at night, you're away from your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend. You're away from your kids, which for me was always the hardest thing. You get on the bus and you're leaving a little 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, you know, and they're waving at the bus, you drive away, and that can wear on you after a while. How does a person on the road these days, how do they deal with that mental health aspect? Because now you have all access on site, which is part of Touring Career Workshop. How does that play into all of this?
Yeah, and to get to talk a little bit about all access on site, we kind of got to take a step back and talk about our regular all access program.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to address, like as you said, how do people deal with this on the road? We hope they don't internalize it, but I've been guilty of that myself, of carrying that stress, that the long days, the tiredness, the fatigue, the worries from your home life with you, and internalizing that. We hope people are at the point now where, because we're having such open, honest conversations about mental health, that they're willing to have open, honest conversations. And the fact that we now have telehealth through all of our providers is a huge resource for anybody out there on the road. Mm-hmm. One of the great things we saw come out of the pandemic, one of the few great things we saw come out of the pandemic, was this emergence of telehealth as a resource. So if you are having a bad day on the road, as a road person, now you can set an appointment, hop on a Zoom, and talk things out. I've used that, and it's incredible. So, but to go back to the all access on site, so our original all access program, we started in 2014, and it really started as seeing a need, or really wanted to make sure that finances were never an obstacle for a touring person that wanted to go get counseling or mental health help.
Because that can get rather expensive.
Absolutely.
In I guess what we'd say maybe the secular world or the non-touring world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we all know, look, health insurance in this country, it is what it is, but it does not always cover the mental health side of financially as it should. And so our whole thing was, and especially, unfortunately, we've seen some, suicides in our industry and things that are really gut-wrenching and heartbreaking, that I just wanted to make sure money wasn't an obstacle. So we kind of, at that point, what we started, kind of this organic conversation with local Nashville-based counselors of, hey, if people get referred to you through and they mention the all access program, let's do a set rate, agreed upon rate, or maybe a reduced rate because we're a nonprofit, and just cover them for 4 sessions, no questions asked, send me a bill, we'll pay it, done. And that's kind of been our objective with the standard all access program from the get-go, is make an appointment, go see a counselor, we get a bill, we pay it. And that program alone has probably, I think we're at about 300 sessions of counseling we've covered since 2014.
Wow. What aspects of mental health, and we're not asking to name names here, but when we talk about mental health or the lack thereof because of what the road can do to you, it's not only a physical thing, it is an emotional and it is a mental thing when you're on the road. What are people seeking when they're looking for this counseling?
Everybody's got their baggage, and we all have it, and road people, the fact that we are pulled away from our home lives for such extended periods of time just kind of helps it kind of extenuates that whole stress you might already have. The stress that we might have going home every night, our regular everyday stresses, when you're not there to talk about them face to face with your spouse, say, or if you're going through some addiction issues and you're not there to go to a meeting, if that's an important part of your life, all that just gets compounded on the road because of the lack of time. And the fact that our days on the road are not, we don't work 9 to 5. No, we work 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. 3 or 4 days in a row and then maybe get a day off. So the mental fatigue just compounds with that stress and it just adds up and up and up. And that's the problem. And so like for me, like just stuff I've worked through is like anxiety, and just general things that have come up in my life. Nothing super traumatic, but just life stuff. And just to be able to have that sounding board and talk it out has made a world of difference for me.
And a lot of times when you have, especially if you have 10, 11, 12 people on a tour bus, you don't really realize or understand what that person in the bunk above you or below you or sitting in the front lounge, necessarily what they're going through until maybe it's almost too late.
It is. And look, because you've been on a bus, you get this, a bus of 45 feet long, it sleeps 12. You don't have, the only private space you have is your coffin. That little bunk area, that's your only private space. And unless you're a close-knit group of people that you're willing to go below the line and have deep, real conversations with your tour mates, you're internalizing that, or you're hopping on a Zoom or a phone or whatever you can to talk about that with the people you can go below the line with.
Mm-hmm.
The dynamics have changed so much because I was a tour manager for many, many years. We were the counselors. We were the person to try and talk them off a cliff because maybe their marriage was falling apart or their girlfriend or boyfriend's not returning their phone calls and, what's going on. And you literally have these fragile beings. You don't realize it until you get to that point. But you have these fragile beings. Is that where this counseling service, I don't want to say shortstop, but maybe can get in front of that a little quicker than the tour manager would have many years ago?
Yeah, and to your point, yes, you're right. And that is our hope. We have heard of some tours, and I do know that some tours are bringing counselors out from time to time to do check-ins. In fact, one of the counselors that works with us on All Access, she goes out and tours from time to time with artists and just goes spends a weekend, and she's there. If you need to talk, let's go grab a private dressing room. We'll have a conversation. And that kind of ties into a similar thought process behind our All Access on-site program, which we were talking about earlier. That's kind of how that came to be, is because when we go to a music festival, say Bonnaroo, we've got over the course of 4 days, 100, 125 bands on 7, 8 stages. Well, those people may have been on the road for weeks, if not months, depending on the tour cycle they're in. Somebody's got baggage. There's somebody on that show site's having a bad day.
Guaranteed.
It is. They are. And so the whole thought is that let's bring this resource to these festivals. Let's set up this place back a house. It's for bands, artists, crew. We don't just deal with crew. We're talking about anybody working behind the scenes on the festival or on stage. We've had artists show up to this. And this, honestly, I want to give credit where credit's due. This was the brainchild of one of our board members, Brandon Sossman. So Sharon's a board member. We have 15 of us on the board. Sharon's one of our most active board members. We appreciate everything she does. But the other one that's just jumped in there is Brandon Sossman. He is a director of production for C3 Presents, which is a Live Nation offshoot. They put on Bonnaroo, Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits. And he came to us. He actually brought it up during a board meeting, said, hey, what about bringing counseling to festivals? And he made it happen, and it took off. When we went to Bonnaroo last year, we had 22 people come in for counseling over 4 days. And to some people, that may be like not a lot, but you got to think, these weren't like pre-planned. I'd planned this weeks ago. I know I'm going to have a bad day at Bonnaroo and show up at counseling. No, these are people that on a whim saw the QR codes like, man, I need to get in there and talk something out. And so it's proven itself. And then we took it to Lollapalooza and Austin City Limits. So in this year alone, we've already booked at 8 different festivals. I think that number is going to double before the end of the year as fast as it's growing.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for a couple of our sponsors who support the show. When we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Sharon Lee and Chris Lisle.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names: marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof. building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, sitting across the podcast table, Sharon Lee, who is the CEO of High Road Trucking, and Chris Lisle, who is the Executive Director of Touring Career Workshop. During our break, you, Sharon, brought up some things that we haven't discussed yet, which are some maybe outliers of what Touring Career Workshop offers in this all-access on-site program and beyond.
Right, yeah. So Touring Career Workshop, that's a huge component. We do our fall workshop, which has continued, as Chris mentioned, since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since 2011, that's continued. Last year, I think we had about 400 people at Soundcheck for that workshop, which was phenomenal. But one of the things we've instituted this year, it's been pretty exciting, was a program called Day Off. And Chris, do you want to talk about that?
I want to say that Day Off was Sharon's brainchild, and she's run with this and killed it. It's been amazing. Basically the concept was monthly meetups for touring personnel that would kind of engage conversation and activity and just give the touring people something to do on their random Tuesday that they're home.
Right.
Because what roadie is home on Friday or Saturday? It's not happening. So these were Sharon's idea, and we've already had some fun ones. We did a trivia night, which I love because all the board kind of submitted trivia questions, and it was kind of fun to see all those. And then the first one we did was we did a cornhole tournament in partnership with Shure.
Yes.
And then this next one, which Sharon's put together, is awesome. We're going on April 30th. We're going to the Sounds baseball game. We've kind of got an area set aside at the Sounds game.
That's here in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, roadies, we love hot dogs and popcorn. So
who doesn't?
We will be there. Remind everybody, how do we sign up for this?
Yeah, so it's on our website, Touring Career Workshop. Just click on events, and there it is. And I also have to say, this is put together. We have a great new general manager, Kara Kemp, who's been really helpful in getting this put together. But we couldn't do it without Crew One, who is sponsoring the event and has made it more affordable. So it's not an insurmountable amount to come out and hang out with your touring friends.
It's great. And again, as an organization, every one of us on the board, like I said, there's 15 of us. We all have day jobs. As you know, Sharon owns her own amazing company, and I've got my thing. And it's fun just to get our brain collectives together to figure out how best to serve our industry. And so whenever we get together, it's fun to kind of hear these ideas that people have, and like Sharon in the Day Off program and Brandon and the All Access on Site, and just really see these people have a heart for serving our industry. It's very heartwarming because it's those are my people.
Yeah.
When we talk about the backstage scene, because I remember back in the 70s and 80s when I first got into the business, the backstage world was a whole lot different than it is today. Back then, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, it's literally what it was. It was almost a fantasy land, so to speak. But now it's all business. And it's all...
And granola bars.
And yoga. It's become a very healthy environment. It has become the anti of what it was 30, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. With that being said, the person who is behind the scenes, whether it's the roadie or the tour manager, the front of house guy, the monitor engineer, guitar tech, etc. Are you finding that they feel at ease with these opportunities to be able to go and talk with someone? And I believe you said it's 4 sessions?
We cover up to 4 sessions, and then, once those 4 sessions are done, there are several other organizations that'll take over that will help kind of guide you to Backline, Music Cares. There's several others that, and our counselors all know this, that when you're 4 or up with us, they will help continue. We're not just going to leave you at that point. We're going to make sure you have the resources, and in some cases, we've paid for additional sessions just to make sure people are getting the help they need. But to answer your question, or do people feel comfortable? Look, I've kind of had this mentality from the get-go. All we can do is offer the information and the service. That whole adage of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, we just got to let people know it's there, because you don't know when somebody's going to lose a loved one and need to talk it through. We had that happen actually at Bonnaroo.
Well, in fact, Sharon, you had that happen with one of your drivers on the road.
I did. We talked about that last time I was here. One of our drivers lost his son very unexpectedly, very tragically, while he was on tour. And I'll be honest with you, he's now receiving counseling. He's with Backline, has taken care of him. He has a case manager, and he's having weekly sessions while he's on tour, and it's been fantastic.
And let's really clarify something. This doesn't mean you're a bad person. This doesn't mean that you're not put together correctly. Obviously, you said we're the island of misfit toys, which we really are in this business. Sometimes there's a stigma to this when you go and you seek out counseling, but there shouldn't be, because we're all basically healthy individuals, but we have those hiccups in our life that Sharon, like you described, where things happen that we have no control of. And when you're on the road, it's really, really tough to be able to decompress and open up to someone.
Yeah, and you know what I love? I don't know if you agree with this, but I love that the fact that we're sitting here today having this conversation, it just shows what great steps our industry has made into being open about this. This whole stigma of don't talk about it, it's taboo to talk about your mental health, that this is kind of going to the wayside, and we can sit down and say, hey, I'm not okay. That doesn't mean I'm going to air everything I'm going through to the whole world, but to acknowledge that I'm imperfect and that I need to talk through my stuff with a trained, licensed professional. I'm okay to tell you that.
Does the trained, licensed professional see an aspect of maybe where this person maybe needs to get off the road for a while? I mean, do they have those discussions without, once again, naming names? And how do you approach something like that?
Well, the good thing is, and I think this is probably reassuring for the people getting counseling, we're not privy to that.
Yeah, okay.
We don't know what's being discussed during counseling. That's between the counselor and the individual. And I'm sure those conversations happen. I would imagine that they do at some point. Yeah, that's really between them and the counselor.
It becomes a very intimate conversation one-on-one.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And I think that's so important.
Right.
Because we sometimes get afraid to open up that heart and share that trauma, for maybe a lack of a better word, or maybe not understanding what's going on emotionally or mentally. Is this, you mentioned Bonnaroo and you've mentioned some other festivals. Is this something that is now going on the road, not only from a touring aspect, but with festivals all over the country? And do you see this expanding globally?
I would hope globally. Wow, that would be amazing. I can speak to our country and the U.S. So in addition to hiring our general manager, Kara, we've just hired a great lady named Casey Kleckler. She is a life coach, and she is one of the ones that really helped us get All Access on site off the ground last year. She's now come on working for us, helping really get this program launched. We were very fortunate toward the end of 2023. We did a donation drive just to fund this program that raised a pretty significant amount of money to be able to go out and provide this service all year. And so, like I said, last year we were at 3 festivals. This year we're already at 8, and I know she's in conversations with others. We're at a festival next weekend. Like we're gonna be at CMA Fest this year. It's taken off, and so seeing it all over this country is something I would love to do. Will every festival have it? I don't know that we'll see that anytime soon, but as many as we can get it to, absolutely.
You brought up something that I obviously want to cover, and you mentioned donations. How is this funding provided? Are you seeking donations? Do you have sponsorships? What feeds the cost of this?
Well, that's a great question. So we are official. We are a 501c3. We've been that since 2012 when we realized that we had something. We were onto something here, and let's do this the right way. But yeah, we're funded by sponsorships, and most of our sponsors are industry based. They're companies like Crew One and Bandit Lights and Moo TV and Claire Brothers and all these vendors that provide production. Sharon's company, High Roads, has been a sponsor. Really anybody that has people, equipment, et cetera, on the road have been great sponsors. Even Live Nation has become a big sponsor of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Can an individual who feels compelled become a sponsor, maybe from an anonymous standpoint, just wants to add fuel to the money machine?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that we appreciate, as with any nonprofit, we appreciate anybody willing to contribute to the cause. And yeah, if you go to touringcareerworkshop.com/donate or /, it's a slash. You'll see it on there. Donate.
It's one of those
slashes. One of those ones. I'm still learning this web thing. Yeah, we appreciate any donations that come through for sure. We put the money. Everybody. There's the only two paid employees we have are Kara and Casey. The whole board are all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. We all just give our time because we have a passion for our industry and for our peers.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for a couple more of our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Sharon Lee and Chris Lisle.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
As a musician, you have a dream. That vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is a part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about independence coupled with committed benevolent interest, which means that they can represent your client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products. It's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact John Adams at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309 for more information.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Music Dog Studios. Sharon Lee and Chris Lisle are joining me today. We're having a discussion which is something we don't talk about too often, which is mental health. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. Back in the day, you would deal with mental health by many cases, drinking, doing drugs, doing things you shouldn't be doing while you're on the road. We don't have time for that these days in this business because it really has become a business when we're out on the road. With that being said, there's a whole new breed. Chris, you and I talk about, we've done our time. We've served that time being on the road, and now there's a whole new generation that's constantly coming up because this is a 800-pound gorilla that has to constantly be fed. Mm-hmm. How do you go about maybe putting the right mindset, if that's the correct way to say it, with this younger generation as they come into the business? Or do you have a way to be able to have an opportunity to chat with them as they make the decision to enter this world?
I know Sharon and I both have done some mentoring to various people that have approached us in our careers. And look, I'm going to sound like that crotchety old man right now when I say this next generation, yada, yada. Look, every generation, it changes and it's different. And I imagine the way I looked as a young road person to my peers may not have been as ideal. And I kind of am seeing that too. And what I'm getting at is I think a lot of us older road people are seeing a little bit of just, I don't want to call it work ethic challenges, but there's challenges to the next generation coming up. And the most important thing we can do is set the example and be there for them and mentor. Mentorship is huge. One of the other things we really push at Touring Career Workshop is networking. Any event we do, like these day off, the whole day off event is not just to watch a baseball game, it's to network. Our fall workshop is bookended, beginning of the night, end of the night with networking, because our industry is so based around who you know, those relationships, and people willing to take the time to answer questions. And so my thought is just keep investing in them. You know, every now and then you're going to find a standout that'll really just go and do great things. And those that don't, you know, tend to weed themselves out. Those that don't have the stomach for touring and can't do the long hours or the long days or weeks away from home tend to go the wayside. But other than that, it's just about spending the time with them and answering the questions.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the work ethic, and this isn't beating up on the younger generation, but this requires a special breed of an individual to be out on the road. And it's not for the weak. It's not for the timid.
Yeah. I will say, along with that, I think that this generation is probably one of the most informed generations ever, just because of our access to the internet and social media. That does not mean they're the most capable. It just means they're most informed. And I think that's a little bit dangerous in a lot of ways, because they come into these environments that they've never worked in before, thinking they know a lot more. And it's not always practical. You really need the hands-on experience. So I think, if I have any advice at all that I would say is, we have mentored individuals, as have many of the board members. Humble yourself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's my biggest advice for the young ones coming up and stepping onto that backstage for the first time. Humble yourself, pay attention, learn, and
don't be afraid to ask questions.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Absolutely not. Don't go in there thinking that you know everything, because
you don't.
Because you really don't. There's a difference between sitting in a college class and watching TikTok versus actually being on that stage and working those hours with those people under those circumstances. So, yeah.
This wasn't around when, Chris, you and I were starting in the business. And I remember back in the day, the advice that was given to me by a tour director, and I don't know if it was necessarily sage advice or not, but he told me, say yes until you have to say no. Mm-hmm. And you know, can you do this? Can you be a monitor engineer? Can you be a guitar tech? Can you be a lighting director? Sure. Yes. And then you go, what are those things? And how do you go about doing them? And you're right. We didn't have social platforms like YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or whatever to be able to look it up and go, oh, that's how you do it.
Right.
And it could be a very scary world. But at the same time, that much hasn't changed these days, because the book knowledge is so much different than the street knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one important thing I want to talk about that ties everything we're talking about today together is the effects the pandemic had on our industry. And as we all know, we lost Sharon, and we can, and probably yourself, I mean, the schedule's emptied. Like, it was insane. But coming out of the pandemic, what we saw by our own Touring Career Workshop surveys was a 25 to 30% loss in workforce. And with that, there's a couple things that happened. One, those that were left all of a sudden were starting becoming overworked, gig after gig after gig, which adds to what? Your stress, your tiredness, which causes the mental health conversation to be even stronger. And then on top of that, the people that left our industry were either the people that were already close to retirement anyways, or the young people that were like, I don't know, I'm going to go do something else. Well, now, so basically we had this generation of people that were going to become great road people. The pandemic knocked a lot of them out, and now we're starting kind of fresh with another set. So we're just now 3 years later, after we started doing shows again, starting to get to a point where there's enough people. But I'm telling you, we still don't have enough people, but just starting to get there with the young people.
And that puts an added pressure on those that are out on the road now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so this all feeds into the stress and the tiredness and the mental health. It's all part of the one big snowball.
Let's go back again and mention, how can people find out more information on this? Where do they need to go to, website-wise, social media, etc.?
Absolutely, yeah. touringcareerworkshop.com. We have a tab for all access. We have a tab for all access on site. If you go to either of those, it'll kind of point you in the right direction toward counselors or toward which festivals we're going to be at. Socials, we're Touring Career Workshop at Touring Career Workshop on Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's just Touring Career Workshop is the page.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that wants to get involved in these day off events, how does that go? How does that happen?
Same. It's promoted on our social media. There is an event page on our website. They can click on and see what's coming up and how to register for those. We're doing a better job of registering. First few, we kind of learned our lesson. It was a little bit of a free-for-all, show up. I will say we've talked a lot about the opportunities that are there, and we talk about networking. Networking's important, but at the same time, I will say Day Off was really started. Actually, I had been spending some time with another board member. We had gone kayaking. We went to the zoo. We hung out. It's a better place to go than a bar.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's great, and that's where the idea sort of came from. But it's really, as much as it's an opportunity to network for your career, it's an opportunity to connect with other people that are doing life just like you're doing and having the same highs and having the same lows and the same challenges and the same everything. It's just an opportunity to connect. I've met people at various conferences. I was at a conference in Lidditz last year, and I met so many people from Nashville that I had never met before. And they said, wow, we wish we had something like this in Nashville. And so this is an opportunity for you to just really connect. And if you're in town, if you're touring, and you happen to be in Nashville during that time period, great. We'd love to have you too.
I got to say that you invited my wife and I to the cornhole day off night. And we got to meet, I'm an old salty road dog, and I'm old enough to be some of these people's grandparents, But we met some really neat, ambitious, driven individuals who I was impressed. When we left that night, I was like, wow, this is the future of the industry. We're going to be okay.
Yeah. And what was great about that night, that was our inaugural day off. We had over 80 people show up, and they represented every aspect of the industry, which was amazing. The age range was the students right up to
the old guy.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, sure. Okay. We had everybody there from the management side to production people to lighting, tour managers, production managers, artist managers. It just ran the gamut of everyone that was there represented. And it was great because you did met a lot, we all had an opportunity to meet people we had never met before and make connections and start building relationships.
Well, I think you've got to keep doing that because that's
we're planning on it. We're trying.
Such a wonderful event. Here's a shout out to all of our loyal listeners. Without all of you, we wouldn't be one of the most listened to music industry interview podcasts, including achieving #1 status in many countries around the world, according to Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show, please check out our Facebook page at The Business Side of Music Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on The Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. You can check out our video webcasts there and get to see me and our guests, such as Sharon and Chris here in the studio. Last but not least, check out and follow us on Twitter at Biz Music Podcast. That's BIZ Music Podcast. Chris, Sharon, thank you so much for being on the show. This was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you, Bob.
Same here.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.